Elic119.
Tips and tricks. Hello YouTube, this is Elic119 here with a video showing you everything you need to know about playing mid Fiora. Now I know when everybody hears Fiora they cringe and go, "Oh no, not the Fiora, she has no CC, no damage, she's completely pointless." Well, I'm here to beg and differ on that one. Pretty much Fiora's my main character. Whenever I go Fiora, I normally go about 20 plus kills and a little bit under 5 deaths. It's very abnormal to see Fiora mid. I like it that way. They don't expect it. Fiora is normally played top, kind of a bruiser, and without any CC, she pretty much sucks. That is why she is one of the least picked champions in League of Legends. Now, I don't like that because Fiora's my main and I always get a lot of hate whenever I pick her, but I go mid with her, which is something that no one ever sees. When you start out playing Fiora mid, you're going to want to take her W, Riposte, first. Basically what that does is it gives you a passive 15 bonus attack damage, as well as whenever an enemy auto attacks her, she reflects, I believe, 80 magic damage right back to them, which makes it very easy when you're going mid. The enemy wants to poke you a little bit, they might get some abilities in, but if they try and auto attack you, you do just as much damage right back, and then you can zone them pretty easily mid. See exactly what I'm talking about right here. Talon will go to attack me. I'll activate my W Riposte and double Q on him, which is her lunge. Her Q is a lunge that can only be used on enemies, unfortunately. If it could be used on allies, that'd be a little bit more helpful, but at least it can be used twice within 3 seconds. It deals a good amount of damage, and it scales pretty well. Starting at level 1 with the proper runes and masteries, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and her W, you should have basically a starting attack damage of around 80, which allows you to last hit minions incredibly easily, and because most mids have a hard time last hitting, you will definitely outfarm your enemy. All you have to do is zone from there and you'll dominate mid lane. Alright, whenever you're leveling Fiora, first you're going to want to get a point in W as I said, and your second point in Q as your gap closer. But after that, you want to focus her W again, so that she can get as much passive attack damage for the early game, and then later, you're going to want to focus her E. Her E is pretty much just a steroid. It gives her up to 120% attack speed when she activates it, lasts for a couple seconds, and also remember it resets on champion kills and assists. And of course, there is her press R and win button. Pretty much, it does a lot of damage, it scales really well, it hits up to all 5 enemies, it does choose randomly, but what I consider pretty much the best part about her ultimate is it gives her untargetability for 2 seconds. Whenever possible, you want to put a point in her ultimate, as with any other champion, of course. Now, combinations with her skills, if you want to have a safe poke, what you need to do is go up next to the enemy minions, you're going to want to lunge at the enemy, activate your riposte, wait for them to attack you and you get a couple hits in, and then you're going to want to lunge out before that 3 seconds has expired. What I do to get a little bit extra damage, since I do have a long sword, very offensive masteries and runes, and my W first, what I'm going to want to do is double Q since it scales with AD. Whenever you double lunge at someone on top of your riposte, and if you can get your E and a couple hits in there, you'll take them down to half health without even taking a hit yourself. You've seen me do that a couple times at Talon here and there, but unfortunately whenever you do that you do not have a safe escape route, and Fiora not having any CC or escape after that does leave her quite open to ganks. And notice me take down this Talon pretty easily right here. I get him to very low health and he doesn't hurt me too much. I didn't time my riposte very well there, but you get the basic idea of that. Now, like I was saying, she doesn't really have a getaway. I'm about to get ganked right here, and the only possible option to do when you're pushed past mid is you have to flash. Another very useful tip on Fiora is actually whenever she's very low health, I know a lot of enemies do like to turret dive. Some of them get a little bit anxious on getting that first kill. We only have 1 kill on each team, so pressure's kind of on mid right now. But basically, getting low health isn't too big of a deal. I can get back up pretty quickly with her passive, which does heal for health over time. Most people they kind of ignore it. It's a little bit underrated. I think it puts her healing at about almost, say, equal to a full health potion whenever she gets all of her attacks on an enemy champion. It does stack more on champions. But what you're going to notice is you're going to see Talon get a little bit too excited about killing me, and I'm going to ultimate while he's in turret range, leaving him to take turret damage, me to take none, and be untargetable to his damage. And then getting the last damage in, I will pick up first blood. Taking a look at her build, Fiora is normally built as a top lane bruiser as I mentioned before, but I prefer to build her glass cannon. I'll rush a BF sword as early as possible if I can pick up that vampiric scepter and just can't quite afford the BF sword. That works too. Gives you a little bit of extra sustain on top of her passive. But basically, rushing Bloodthirster is the best thing you can do early in the game. A BF sword alone gives you a massive amount of damage. Like you're going to notice right here, I take Talon down incredibly easily. He doesn't even get me down to half health, and I didn't even have to use my ultimate. All I had to do was double Q on him, riposte, and use my E as a follow-up. Following up her Bloodthirster, you are going to want to rush her Berserker Greaves and then try and get a Phantom Dancer as quick as possible. Most people normally try and take an Infinity Edge for that extra damage, but I believe that you need more attack speed and critical strike that you get with the Phantom Dancer, because it likes to stack pretty nicely with her E. Another tip whenever you're in lane, by the way, as I'm seeing right here, you're going to need to try and gank as much as possible if you are doing well. Her parry, especially if you have a red buff or a frozen heart, if you decide to go that route, does make it quite easy to gank before they get away. And if you're low health, you can ultimate while your team catches up to you. But back to her build, after you've picked up a Phantom Dancer, then you're going to want her Infinity Edge, followed by a second Phantom Dancer. Now, some people don't do this. They like to take some more defensive options, such as a Warmogs or a Frozen Mallot. But I like to do this to get as close as I can to about 100% critical strike. Because if you're popping out thousands, you're going to take them down pretty quickly, especially on top of all that lifesteal. If you make it to the late game, you're going to want to get the Fiora enchantment on your boots, as well as a Blade of the Ruined King for those more tanky enemies. Taking a more offensive approach with Fiora, I do have a 21-9 mastery setup. She has no AP, therefore you're going to pretty much stick to the left side of the offensive. And defensive, I like to go for a little bit of extra health. Does make me look a little bit more intimidating early game, which allows zoning to be a little bit easier. But also, one thing I'd like to take particular note of is her health regeneration. Her passive, which heals health over time, stacks quite nicely with the health regeneration early game that you'll see in the defensive masteries. I like to put as many points as possible into that, and sometimes people even like to take health regeneration runes on Fiora, but I do not particularly encourage that. Focusing on Fiora's rune page setup, what I like to take is armor penetration reds, then I like to take armor for golds, and flat magic resistance for silvers. A lot of people normally take scaling magic resistance, but whenever you're going mid lane with that very high probability of being against an AP opponent, you will want the flats and not the scaling. For quintessences, a lot of people they normally take attack damage mid at least. I like to take health. It stacks very nicely with her masteries, and it does make her look more intimidating, again, as I said, since she does not have any extra health later in the game. Taking a look at some of the optional items on Fiora, if you are carrying very hard and you're getting focused very quickly, you might want to get a Guardian Angel as usual. If you need a little bit more health, you can always substitute one of your Phantom Dancers or your Blade of the Ruined King for a Warmogs or a Frozen Mallot. Frozen Mallot does work very well with Fiora, although if you're going against a takey team, I still always take Blade of the Ruined King, especially now that they added a 40% attack speed buff. It makes it a little bit OP in my opinion. Every now and then, if people wisen up, they'll switch a top lane with a mid lane to try and counter Fiora. The only people that I've really ever had trouble with are Kayle, Teemo, and Darius. Sometimes Garen, but they have to be a pretty good Garen. Teemo, the trick is, whenever he blinds you, you have to ultimate. Your ultimate still does all that damage, and the blind continues to wear out while you are doing the damage. That way, whenever your ultimate is over, you can continue attacking him like normal, leaving him completely defenseless. Darius, the only real option to do there is you need to try and bait him into the turret and ultimate while he's in the turret, or try and get a gank. Darius pretty much shuts down everyone early game. Thankfully, they did just nerf his ultimate, that way he can't just constantly be dunking people. Was a little bit annoying. And Kayle, you need to start out with lifesteal against Kayle. Instead of rushing the BF sword, you probably need to take some potions. If you're getting ganked, wards on top of that, you need to just take it more defensive. Again, Vampiric Scepter is definitely a must against Kayle. Now, if you'll notice this game, I am, I believe, 8-1 and 5. I do have 100 minions at the 20-minute mark, and the enemy team does surrender here, showing exactly what mid Fiora can do. Just to make sure there's no doubt that I didn't just get lucky that game or it was because I was against another melee mid, here's a quick clip from the following game actually. It's going mid against an Orianna. Right here we have equal health, but I'm going to double Q at her, activate my riposte to get that extra reflect damage, and pick up first blood. I have one more short clip, but I'm going to go ahead and go over a couple pros and cons again real quick. Pros, tons of damage. She has a gap closer and block move. She can become untargetable, and she has a very actually good passive. And her cons, no getaway and no CC. Well, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe.